Long-acting are salmeterol, formoterol, bambuterol.
Good, good. Okay, what is the mechanism of action of salbutamol? How does it relieves or bronchoconstriction, or how does it produce bronchodilation? What is the mechanism of bronchodilators or the beta 2 agonist?
And they act on
There's
beta receptor.
Okay, okay, speak.
Beta 2 receptor in the smooth muscle of bronchial walls.
Okay, by acting on the beta 2 receptor, then how does it? What is the further mechanism?
That will relax the muscle and causes
How
bronchitis.
does it relax?
And bicarbonate of ATP into cyclic AMP by action on adenylate cyclase.
Okay, by activating the adenylyl cyclase, it increases the concentration of the cyclic AMP level. Okay, this cyclic AMP level is responsible for the bronchial relaxation or bronchodilation. Okay, these drugs by acting on the beta receptors, it activate the adenylyl cyclase, thereby increasing the level of cyclic AMP and cause bronchodilation. That is how you have to tell. Okay, if somebody is asking mechanism of action, don't tell only that it acting on the beta receptor and cause bronchodilation. Okay, you have to tell all these things. Okay, in bronchodilators or beta 2 agonist, we have discussed salbutamol. Okay, salbutamol and torbutalin, they are the short acting selective beta 2 agonist. Okay, that's why they are used only for the termination of the acute attack. Okay, they are not used for the round the clock prophylaxis, or they are not used for the chronic bronchial asthma. Okay, they are not used for the long term because of the short action only. And also, if you are using these drugs for the long time, there is a down regulation of the beta receptors. Okay, with the time being, the effectiveness of the drugs will decrease, and the patient sometimes they are high risk of status asthmaticus. Okay, although the patient is taking the drugs is not working efficiently. Okay, because of the down regulation of the beta receptor. Okay, in long term use. That's why this beta 2 agonists, they are not used for the long term purpose. Okay, they are just used for the termination of the acute attack and also for the short period of time only. Okay, that is the very important things you should know in short acting beta 2 agonist. And this salbutamol, torbutalin, and any other beta 2 agonist, the most common preferred route of administration is by the inhalation route. Why inhalation route? Do you know the answer? Why the inhalation route is more preferred than other oral, intravenous, and other route?
It will
And
minimize systemic.
selectivity.
Yeah, it increase the selectivity and decrease the toxic effect. Okay, systemic side effect. Because when you are using by the inhalation route, it act topically only in the lungs only. Okay, it is not absorbed into the systemic circulation, thereby decreasing the toxic effect of the drugs. Okay, that is the more important purpose of giving the drugs by the inhalation route. So inhalation route we can given by the various devices. Okay, that the first one we have discussed, MDI, meter dose inhaler. Okay, and then nebulizer and the dry powder inhaler, also known as rotacap. So we have discussed what is MDI. Okay, why it is known MDI? Because the certain amount of the drugs is delivered into the lungs when you are pressing the canister. Okay, in one puff certain amount of the drugs is delivered into the lungs. Okay, that's why it is known as meter dose inhaler. Okay, the drugs is measured already. Okay, in one puff what is the dose of the drugs that will deliver into the lungs. That's why it is known as meter dose inhaler. So this device is very commonly used for using the that sympathomimetic drugs. Okay, beta 2 agonist, mostly the salbutamol, torbutalin, and also for the long acting drugs. Okay, bambuterol, formoterol also. So the in MDI, the main things you should know is the direction, how to use. Okay, until and unless the device is used in the proper manner, there is no effectiveness of the drugs. Okay, the actual amount of the drugs will not reach into our lungs. Okay, so the effectiveness of total effective of the drugs is not produced. Okay, because of the unusual or the improper use of the that MDI device. So that how to use the MDI device also I have already discussed in yesterday's class. Okay, first you have to shake that MDI very well. I have also shown you the device. Okay, can you see in my hand? That things I have explained clearly yesterday, I think, in the previous class. So this is how you have to take this device into your hands. Okay, that mouthpiece should face towards you. Okay, towards the patient. This is the mouthpiece. Can you see in my hand? MDI? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
You can see in the figure also. So before putting this mouthpiece into your mouth, first you have to breathe out your ear. Okay, breathe out all the way, and then you put this mouthpiece into your mouth. Okay, surrounded by your lips, tightly hold by your lips. Okay, and then you have to breathe in. Okay, during the breathing you have to press the canister. Okay, this is the canister that contains the fixed amount of the drugs. So after pressing it, you have to hold your breath for around 10 seconds. Or if you can hold more than 10 seconds also. Okay, it's your convenient. And then after 10 seconds, you have to breathe out. Okay, this is how we have to use this MDI. And after every use, you have to rinse your mouth with water. Okay, to prevent any fungal infection. Okay, candidal infection. So we have to rinse our mouth. Clear how to use MDI? This is a very important practical question. Okay, that can be asked in your Viva as well, in your university exam. So in patients who are not coordinating with mouth and the device, that like in small children and the very old patient, geriatric patient, okay, those patients having the Parkinsonism disease, okay, in that patients, there is no coordination of this device with their mouth. So in that condition, we can give another device, okay, attached with this, that is spacer. Okay. And with spacer also in small children, the face mask also attached, okay, for the ease of the children. You can see in this figure. So what is the advantage of the spacer? I have already discussed in the previous class. No coordination is required, no cold freon effect. Cold freon means that is a projectile, that is a cold blast of the MDI propellant, okay, that is projected in your throat. That type of effect is not seen in case of spacer. And reduce the oropharyngeal deposition as well, okay, increase dog deposition in the lungs. Can you see the slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Next device is
Yes,
nebulizer. Okay, this nebulizer is also a device which are used for the inhalation purpose. Okay, in the very small children, those who cannot coordinate with the MDI, and also for the very old patient, as well as in case of severe asthmatic patients where they cannot use the MDI. Okay, in case of unconscious patient also, this device are very much useful. Okay, I think all of you have seen this device either in your home or in the hospital. Okay, this is a nebulizer machine. Okay, this is a ear tube. Can you see this pipe? Okay, this is a ear tube. Okay, this all the base is the compressor. Okay, nebulizer compressor, in which the after joining the current, that will compress the ear, and that ear will flow in this tube. Okay, ear tube. And this is a nebulizer cup in which drugs is kept. Okay, and this is a mouthpiece. In mouthpiece, face mask is attached, and the person will take the vapor from this face mask. Okay, aerosol. So this is an electronic device. Okay, the current is attached in this device. From the back, there is one current line, and the device is attached to the electricity. And this is the on-off button. Can you see the black color? This is a. Can you see that cursor that I am using?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
this is a,
ma'am.
yeah, this is the on-off button. Okay. After connecting with the current, you have to do on, either on or off. Okay. If you require, then you do on, and after power on, this compressor machine start to work. Okay, and the air will flow in this tube. From the compressor, air will come into this air tube, and from the air tube it will go into the nebulizer cup, okay, in which drug is kept. So when the air mixed with the solution in this nebulizer cup, the solution of the drugs is kept, okay, either the salbutamol solution or other drugs, okay, anticholinergic drugs or the corticosteroids, okay, in the form of solution, liquid form, that is kept in this nebulizer cup. Okay, so when the air mixed with this solution, there is a formation of the aerosol. Okay, that vapor will be inhaled by the patient through this mouthpiece or through the mask. Okay, this is how we are using this nebulizer machine to inhale the drugs in the form of aerosol or the vapor. Because there is no need of coordination, and other person can also help in this. Okay, so we can attach the mouse by the other person also. That's why it can be used in case of unconscious patient, very small children, infants, okay, and in very old patient. Okay, that is the advantage of nebulizer. And also this device can be used for the inhalation of normal saline also. You can just keep the water and inhale also, okay, plain water also, and also the normal saline also, rather than drugs and all. Okay, so that is the other advantage of this nebulizer. Next device or the next inhalation method is the rotahaler or the dry powder inhaler. Okay, why this is known as dry powder inhaler? Because in this device the powder is inhaled or the powder is delivered into the lungs, okay, from this device. So this is a mouthpiece, that is upper portion. This is a rotacap hole in which capsule is kept, okay, that contains the drug, and this is the base. So after putting the capsule in this rotacap hole, you have to rotate the base. Okay, can you see the rotacap in my hand? This.
No, ma'am.
Now, can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this upper portion is the mouthpiece. Okay, and you can see here a small hole. Okay, this is the rotacap hole in which drug is kept. Okay, the drug is available in the form of capsule like this. Can you see the capsule in my hand? Okay, this capsule, okay, it has a transparent portion and the opaque portion. Okay, so this transparent portion of the capsule should be inserted in this rotacap hole. So after inserting, you have to take this mouthpiece very firmly, okay, and then you have to rotate the base, okay, base like this. So when you are rotating the base, the capsule will break down. Okay, this capsule will, the transparent portion of the capsule will break down, and the dry powder of the drugs is released, or that is come down in the base of this rotacap. Okay, and after the fine powder comes here, you have to take through the mouth. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, internet drop in between, so there's no connection for a few seconds. Listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see the slide right now?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Which one?
Rotaheller.
Rotaheller.
Okay, so you should know how to use the rotaheller. Okay, mouthpiece, and it has a hole and the base. So you have to put this capsule in the rotacap hole. Okay, after inserting the capsule, you have to press press the that base. Okay, you have to rotate the base so that the inserted capsule will break down and the powder will come into the base. Okay, and after then you have to take the drugs by breathing in. So you have to put this mouthpiece into your mouth like MDI. Okay, and you have to breathe in the powder form. So the main advantage of this rotaheller is that you can breathe many times or you can inhale many times, okay, multiple times to finish the powder that is in the base. Okay, unlike MDI. MDI we have to only press once because one puff will deliver the certain amount of the drugs. But in case of the rotaheller, we have already the amount of the drugs in the base. Okay, that drugs we have to finish in the multiple inhaled. Okay, so that is the main advantage of the rotaheller MDI. So this is how we are using this dry powder inhaler. First you have to insert, then you have to rotate the base by firmly pressing this mouthpiece, and then you have to insert into your mouth between the lips, and you have to breathe in. Okay, and you have to hold your breath for at least 10 seconds and breathe out. The advantage is that it overcomes hand-lungs coordination problems that are encountered with the MDI. Okay, those patients who cannot use MDI, for those we can give this rotaheller device or the rotacap. Can be easily used by the children, elderly, and the arthritic patient as well. Okay, so it can be used by the children, very old patient, because the coordination is not required and the multiple times we can inhale this drops. Can take multiple inhalation if the entire drugs has not been inhaled in one inhalation. Okay, we have to finish the drugs that is in the base. So we can do multiple inhalation. That is the main advantages of this rotaheller over MDI. Next, we have the long-acting selective beta-2 agonist. Okay, in this we have different drugs, salmeterol, formoterol, and the bambuterol. Okay, in long short-acting, we have salbutamol and torbutalin. The mechanism of action and everything is similar of salbutamol and torbutalin. Okay, so torbutalin is safe during the pregnancy. Okay, remember this point. You can use this torbutalin in case of pregnancy. Now in long-acting selective beta-2 agonists, salmeterol, formoterol, and the bambuterol. These are the long-acting selective beta-2 agonists with the slow onset of action. Okay, unlike fast-acting beta-2 agonist, it has a very fast action. That's why the salbutamol and torbutalin, they are used for the termination of the acute attack of bronchial asthma. But these drugs, the onset of action is slow. That's why these drugs are not used for the termination of the attack. Okay, that is the very important things you should know. It is a long acting, but the onset of action is slow. The long action is due to the more lipophilic in nature. Okay, it is more lipid soluble, so that the drugs is released in the particular site slowly and slowly. Okay, that provides the long duration of action for this drug. Okay, they are not suitable for the acute attack. Okay, because of the slow onset of action, they are not used for the termination of the acute attack. They are indicated only in the chronic bronchial asthma, nocturnal asthma, as well as maintenance therapy of the asthma. Because of the long duration of the action and slow onset of action, they are used for the chronic bronchial asthma. Okay, as well as the patient having more severe asthma during the night time. So it can cover whole the night time. Okay, when you give before going to the bed, it will prevent the asthma for the whole night. As well as maintenance therapy of asthma. Okay, after the termination of the acute attack by the short-acting drugs, you can maintain the asthma by giving long-acting beta-2 agonist. These drugs also used by the inhalation route. Okay, duration of action varies. Okay, it is 12 to 24 hours. So you can give these drugs twice a day. Whereas salbutamol and torbutalin, you have to give 6 hourly. Okay, frequently. Regular use of this drug worsen the asthma symptoms. Okay, that is same with that of the short-acting drugs because of the down regulation of the beta-2 receptors. So these drugs are also not used for the long term, very long period. Okay, if we have to use for the long term, we can combine with the other drugs, thereby decreasing the dose as well as the side effect of this particular drug. Okay, risk of life-threatening asthma attack may be increased by the regular use of the long-acting beta-2 agonist. So that is also very important things. Okay, so these drugs also not used alone for the long term because it will provides or it will create the life-threatening asthma because of the down regulation of the beta-2 receptor that decrease the effectiveness of the drug. So this long-acting beta-2 agonist can be used along with the other drugs like glucocorticoids, okay, corticosteroids, to decrease the side effect and increase the effectiveness. Okay, produce effect equivalent to double dose of corticoid alone. So if you are using these drugs alone, like corticosteroids alone or the beta-2 agonist, we have to give large dose. Okay, but when you are combining, the dose of the particular individual drugs is decreased. Okay, thereby decreasing the toxic effect and increase the effectiveness of the both the drugs. Should be used only in combination with the inhaled steroids. So these long-acting drugs are used in combination with the inhaled steroids. So various combination formula also available, okay, for the inhalation. So we have finished sympathomimetics, that is beta-2 agonist. There are other non-specific or the non-selective beta agonist also, okay, like adrenaline, isoprenaline, but these drugs are not used nowadays because of the various toxic effect. Okay, because they are non-selective, they act on the other receptor as well. Besides beta receptor, they also act on the alpha receptor also. Okay, beta 1 also. So they produce an unnecessary side effect. So they are not used today because other effective and selective drugs are available in the market. That's why this their use are declined today. Okay, that's why I'm not going in detail that non-selective beta agonist. So if you want to read, you can read from the book. Okay, next, bronchodilators, we have methylxanthine or xanthine derivatives. Okay, these are also classified under the bronchodilators. Okay, do you know how these drugs act? What is the mechanism of this methylxanthine, theophylline, aminophylline? Anybody know?
Inhibiting phosphodiesterase.
Okay, the one is it has a multiple mechanism of action. The one is it inhibits the phosphodiesterase enzymes. Okay, this phosphodiesterase is responsible for the metabolism of the cyclic AMP. Okay, thereby decreasing the level of cyclic AMP. Okay, so these drugs inhibits the phosphodiesterase enzymes. Okay, thereby increasing the level of cyclic AMP. Okay, this cyclic AMP ultimately causes bronchodilation. Okay, this is one of the important mechanism of action of methylxanthine in bronchodilation. And any other mechanism, you know, besides this? Do you know or you don't know? These things I have discussed in the first class also, in that figure. It also inhibits the adenosine receptor, no? That adenosine is the peptide neurotransmitter that is responsible for the bronchoconstriction. Okay, is constriction of the smooth muscles, especially the bronchial smooth muscles. Okay, this adenosine, they act on the other various organs like CNS, CVS also, okay, producing the different effect. So the main predominant action in the smooth muscles of the bronchi that cause bronchoconstriction. So by inhibiting the adenosine receptor, you can see here in this figure, okay, this adenosine, the theophylline bind to the adenosine receptor that is present in the bronchial smooth muscles, thereby inhibiting bronchoconstriction. Okay, that is the another mechanism of action of theophylline to produce bronchodilation. And the one is inhibiting the phosphodiesterase. In phosphodiesterase also we have the different types of phosphodiesterase enzyme. Phosphodiesterase 3, phosphodiesterase 4. Okay, this phosphodiesterase 3 is predominant in the this smooth muscles of bronchi. Okay, whereas the phosphodiesterase 4, they are present in the mast cells and eosinophil. Okay, the another mechanism is that it inhibits the phosphodiesterase 4 in the mast cell as well as the eosinophil. Okay, thereby inhibiting the degranulation of the mast cell, thereby decreasing the release of the histamine, leukotrienes, and other inflammatory mediators. Okay, that is also another mechanism of action of theophylline. So, although this theophylline is a very effective drug for the bronchodilation, their use is declined. Okay, because of the narrow safety margin. Okay, it has a very narrow safety margin. When you slightly increase the dose, it produces a very toxic effect. Okay, like cardiac arrest, like this. Okay, arrhythmia. So it has a very narrow safety margin. That's why this drug's use is declined. Okay, not used so frequently. That's why it is considered as the third or the fourth line drugs in the treatment of bronchial asthma. Okay, because of the narrow safety margin, as well as these drugs has a various drug interaction with the other drugs. Okay, because this is metabolized by the cytochrome enzymes. Okay, various drugs act through the same enzyme, so there is a many drug interaction with these drugs. Okay, because of these two factors, this drugs is not used as a first line drugs, although it is a very effective drugs. Okay, this mechanism I have already discussed. Okay, by increasing the cyclic AMP causes bronchodilation, and inhibiting the release of the histamine and slow releasing substance for anaphylaxis from the mast cell. That is from the same mechanism, by increasing the cyclic AMP and by inhibiting the phosphodiesterase enzyme that is present in the mast cells and eosinophil, thereby improving the mucociliary clearance in respiratory passage. They are well absorbed orally, so these drugs oral tablet form is available. Okay, that can be used by oral route as well as by the intravenous also. Okay, metabolized in the liver by cytochrome 1A2 enzymes. Okay, this is a very common cytochrome enzymes in which many drugs metabolized by these enzymes. Elimination rate varies with the age. Okay, in different individuals, elimination rate varies. THAF in adults is 7 to 12 hours, whereas in children 3 to 5 hours only. Okay, can you see? The THAF is decreased in case of children. So this theophylline, aminophylline, this type of drugs, okay, in children you have to give higher dose because of the less or short THAF. Okay, in children you have to increase the dose than in adults. But in elderly and the premature infants, the half-life is prolonged. In this, you have to decrease the dose, okay, then the adults. So these things you have remember. So that's why I have highlighted here, okay. In the children, you have to increase the dose than that of adult, whereas in case of elderly and premature infants, you have to decrease the dose of theophylline and aminophylline. Dose you can give 100 to 300 mg oral 3 times a day, or you can give by intravenous route. Okay, 10 to 20 microgram per ml you can give. It has a various adverse drug reaction. Okay, starting from the very minor adverse drug reaction to very complicated, okay, severe one that may lead to the threatening of the life. Okay, narrow safety margin it has a dose dependent toxicity. Okay, with a small dose, it has a minor side effect, whereas in the higher dose, side effect also increases. Headache, nausea, vomiting, these are the very common side effect with the low dose. Okay, with the higher dose, you can see here in this figure. So when you are increasing the dose, efficacy is not increased, okay, but the toxicity is increased. So in the 5 microgram, less than 5 microgram per ml, there is no side effect. But when the dose is increased from the 5 micro ml, then the side effect start to be seen, okay. Like around 5 microgram per ml, minimal side effect, and more than 10 microgram per ml, there is a dyspepsia, headache, nervousness, insomnia. And when you further increase the dose, restlessness, tremor, vomiting, palpitation, okay, that affect the CNS. And then when you increase the dose by 20, then it causes agitation, tachypnea, flossing, hypotension, okay, that affect the CVS, cardiovascular system. And if you further increase the dose, then there is a combination of the CVS effect and CNS effect. Okay, delirium, worsening of cardiovascular status, increased muscle tone, extrasystole, and flashes of the light. And if you further increase the dose beyond the 50 microgram per ml, then convulsion, shock, arrhythmia, and finally there is the death of the patient also. Because of this reason, it has a very narrow safety margin. That's why these drugs are not used frequently, although it is a very effective drug. Okay. So you have to monitor the dose. If you are giving these drugs, you have to monitor the dose as well as to monitor the side effect in the patient frequently. They are used for the bronchial asthma and COPD. If the other drugs are not available, and by monitoring the exact dose, you can give in the bronchial asthma patient and COPD. Apnea in premature infants. Okay, apnea means that is a temporary cessation in the breathing in premature infant during the sleeping time, especially. Okay, because of the premature born of these infants, the lungs is not properly matured. Okay, in that condition, infants may suffer from apnea. Okay, during sleeping. So in that condition, we can give this aminophylline or this xanthine derivative drugs that reduce the frequency and duration of apnea in the first few weeks of life. You can give either orally or intravenous for 1 to 3 weeks, but you have to monitor the dose strictly, okay, while you are giving this xanthine aminophylline drugs or theophylline. So these things I have already discussed. These drugs has a various drug interaction with the other drugs. Okay, some drugs they are enzyme inducer, and some drugs they have the enzyme inhibitors. So if you are using these drugs with the enzyme inducers like smoking, phenytoin, rifampicin, phenobarbital, these drugs they are the enzyme inducer that induce the enzymes. Okay, when the drugs induce the enzymes, then metabolism become very fast. Okay, when there is a increased concentration of the enzymes, then there is a increased metabolism, that is a fast metabolism of the particular drugs. So when you are using these drugs with this enzyme inducer like rifampicin and phenytoin, then the plasma concentration of this theophylline is decreased. Okay, in that condition you have to increase the dose. Okay, when you are using with enzyme inducer drugs. Another is enzyme inhibitors. Okay, it has a drug interaction with the enzyme inhibitors drugs as well. So erythromycin, ciprofloxacin, cimetidine, and oral contraceptive pills. Okay, these are the enzyme inhibitors. So when you are using this aminophylline or theophylline with these enzyme inhibitors, then the metabolism is slow. Okay, thereby chance of accumulation of the drugs producing unnecessary toxic effect. Okay, so in that condition you have to reduce the dose by 2/3 of the previous one. Are you getting it?
Yes, ma'am.
drug interaction. These things is very important. It is applied in every drug interaction. Okay, if you are using with the drug inducing agents, if you are using with the inhibiting agents, then what is the consequence? Either you have to increase the dose or you have to decrease the dose. These things you should know. Okay, this is the very basic things. If the enzyme is induced, the metabolism becomes faster. So in that condition, you have to increase the dose. Okay, and if you are using with the enzyme inhibitors, then enzyme is inhibited. Okay, so the metabolism becomes slow. Okay, thereby there is an accumulation of the drug. In that condition, you have to decrease the dose of the particular drugs. Okay, that is a very important things. Its injections should not be mixed in the same infusion bottles, syringes with ascorbic acid, chloropromazine, morphine. Okay, these all are the acidic drugs. And this aminophylline, theophylline, these are the basic drugs. So these drugs should not be infused in the same syringe or same bottles with the acidic drugs. Okay, because there is a acid-base reaction and the drugs become neutralized. Okay, there is no effectiveness of the particular drugs that is given. Okay, that's why never combine these drugs in the same syringe. Okay, this aminophylline and theophylline should not be mixed in the same syringe with these given drugs, ascorbic acid, okay, tetracycline, erythromycin. These all are the acidic drugs. Another important interaction with the sympathomimetics with the methylxanthine. Okay, this sympathomimetics is also bronchodilators and methylxanthine also bronchodilators. Okay, this methylxanthine increase the cyclic AMP level, thereby enhancing the effectiveness of this beta-2 agonist or sympathomimetic drugs. Yes or no? Because both of them have almost similar action. So this beneficial effect is additive. Okay, bronchodilation, this is a beneficial effect for the bronchial asthma. So there is a bronchodilation, but the additive in the cardiac stimulation is a harmful effect. Okay, this sympathomimetics also in the high dose, it has a stimulate the heart also. Okay, thereby producing the palpitation, tremor, other arrhythmia also. Okay, this methylxanthine also produce certain cardiovascular toxicity. So the toxicity is increased. Okay, both the harmful effect and the beneficial effect are additive, but we required only this beneficial effect, no, only meditation. So this is all about xanthine derivatives. Okay. Any doubt in this? So we are moving to next drug. Okay, anticholinergic. So in anticholinergic, we have ipratropium bromide and the tiotropium bromide. Okay, these are very commonly used drugs for the bronchial asthma in combination with the other drugs. Okay, do you know how does these drugs act in bronchial asthma? What is the mechanism?
Muscarinic receptor blocker.
Yes.
Muscarinic receptors, they block muscarinic receptors in the bronchial smooth muscle.
Yeah, because these muscarinic receptors, okay, mostly the M3 receptors, they are predominant in the bronchial smooth muscles, and the acetylcholine is the predominant neurotransmitter for the bronchoconstriction to maintain the tone of the bronchi, bronchial or the lungs muscles. Okay, so by blocking these M3 receptors and by decreasing the level of cyclic GMP, okay, this cyclic GMP is required for the bronchoconstriction. So these drugs inhibit this M3 receptor in the bronchial smooth muscles and by decreasing the cyclic GMP level. Okay, and decreasing the cyclic GMP level, it inhibits the bronchial constriction. Because this acetylcholine, they are the main neurotransmitter for the bronchoconstriction. Okay, by acting on the M3 receptor. So these drugs inhibit the M3 receptor, thereby inhibiting the constrictor tone of the bronchial smooth muscles, cholinergic constrictor tone. So this act primarily in the larger airway which receives vagal innervation. Okay, mostly the larger airways, they receive the vagal innervation. When you see this diagram, these are the larger airways and these are the smaller airways. Okay, this ending, smaller airways. In the smaller airways, beta 2 agonist act, whereas in the larger airways, the cholinergic drugs, okay, anticholinergic drugs act, because most of the receptors, M3 receptors, they are present in the larger airways. Okay, and the beta 2 receptors, they are present in the smaller airways, in the bronchioles, small bronchioles, whereas these M3 receptors, they are present in the larger bronchi. Okay, so because they receive most of the vagal stimulus in the larger bronchi, so they inhibit this M3 receptor in the larger airways. Clear? It has slow onset of action. Okay, that's why it is not used for the termination of the acute attack of bronchial asthma. Okay, they are less effective than sympathomimetic drugs in bronchial asthma, because these drugs only inhibits the vagal tone. Okay, they are not inhibiting the other inflammatory mediators, so they are less effective than sympathomimetic drugs. Okay, but when you are combining these drugs with the sympathomimetic drugs, they can be used for the termination of the acute attack also. But single, it is not used for the termination of acute attack. Okay, because they are less effective and the slow onset of action. Why they are effective, or why they can be used in case of acute attack when they are combined with beta 2 agonist? Okay, that things is very important. What is the rationale of combining with beta 2 agonist with this anticholinergic drugs? Okay, that things I will discuss in the next slide. They preferred, this drugs is preferred in bronchodilators in the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, okay, COPD, because in case of COPDs, that a cholinergic tone is the important component for the constriction of the airway. Okay, only the cholinergic, increase in the cholinergic tone, that causes the narrowing of the airways in COPD patient. Okay, but in case of asthma, along with the constriction of airways, there are other mediators, okay, like histamine, leukotrienes, and others inflammatory mediators. They are responsible for the bronchial asthma. So these anticholinergic drugs, that's why this anticholinergic drugs is more preferred in case of COPD than in asthma. Clear? Now see, okay, these are the smaller bronchioles, and this is the larger airways or larger bronchi. So when you are using this beta 2 agonist with the anticholinergic drugs, then what is the beneficial effect of this combining beta 2 agonist with anticholinergic? Any idea? Anybody?
One act on larger bronchi and another on smaller bronchioles.
Okay, so there is a complete bronchodilation of both, okay, of all the smaller and the larger bronchioles. Yes or no? Complete bronchodilation. So that is one of the beneficial effect of combining beta 2 agonist with the anticholinergic drugs. Other, you know, this beta 2 agonist like salbutamol, they have the rapid onset of action, okay, fast onset of action, where this anticholinergic is slow onset of action and it has a longer duration of action, whereas this beta 2 agonist fast onset of action and short duration of the action. So when you are combining these two in the acute attack by the beta 2 agonist, the action is seen immediately, because this beta 2 will act immediately, but this action is last for the few hours only. This will be continued by the anticholinergic drugs, okay, so that the duration of the action become longer with the anticholinergic. Okay, with the beta 2 agonist, the onset become fast, whereas with the anticholinergic, the duration of the action become longer. So that is the advantage of combining this beta 2 agonist with the anticholinergic drugs. Okay, this is a very important things you should know in where we can ask in your university exam, you can ask in the practical as well as in the theory paper as well. Okay, write down the rationality, or what is the rationale of combining beta-2 agonist with the anticholinergic drugs, or what is the pharmacological basis of combining beta-2 agonist with the anticholinergic agents. Are you clear about this? When you are combining beta-2 agonist with the anticholinergic, one will dilate the small bronchioles and one will dilate the larger bronchi. Okay, there is complete bronchodilation. Okay, and one will act faster and has short duration of the action. The next anticholinergic have slow onset of action and longer duration of action. So the immediate and the prolonged action. Okay, immediate prolonged action and sustained and complete bronchodilation. Okay, these are the advantages of combining beta-2 agonist with the anticholinergic drugs. Okay. Are you clear about this? What is the rationale of combining beta-2 agonist with anticholinergic drugs like ipratropium bromide and tiotropium bromide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you should note all these things. Okay. So because of this various combination formula, the formulation is available in the market. Okay, it is in the form of combi mist. Okay, salbutamol with the ipratropium bromide. It is available in the MDI also. Okay, it is available in the solution that can be inhaled by the nebulizer. Okay, and it is available in the MDI also. So various combination of this beta-2 agonist and anticholinergic are available. Ipratropium bromide, it has a short acting, okay, short duration of action, 4 to 6 hours, but still it has a longer duration than that of beta-2 agonist, no? And tiotropium bromide is still long acting, that is 24 hours. Okay, these drugs, they are better suited for the regular prophylactic use than for the acute attack because of the slower response. When you are using alone, it can be used for the prophylactic use. Advantage of combination, these things I have already discussed. Okay, beta-2 fast onset of action, short duration of action, and dilate the small bronchioles. Whereas anticholinergic, slow onset of action, long duration of action, and dilate the larger bronchioles. So combination become that provides the marked and sustained bronchodilating effect. The combi mist inhaler. Okay, this is the combination of the beta-2 agonist with the anticholinergic drugs in the MDI. Okay, meter dose inhaler. When you press the canister once, it will release 100 microgram of salbutamol along with the 20 microgram of ipratropium bromide. Okay, in MDI. That is total 120 microgram of the drugs is inhaled in the lungs. When you press the canister once, okay, in one puff, it will deliver 120 microgram of combination of two drugs. It can also be used in patient of asthmatic bronchitis, okay, COPD patient as well, and psychogenic asthma. Okay, in case of psychogenic asthma, some patient they have psychological problems, okay, related to asthma. So in that condition, there is an increase in cholinergic tone. So these drugs can be used in case of psychogenic asthma, which responds better to anticholinergic drugs. Inhaled ipratropium bromide and tiotropium bromide, they are the bronchodilators of choice in COPD. So why they are the choice? That things I have already discussed. Okay, because in COPD, the increase in the cholinergic tone, these are the main components for the constriction of the airways. Okay, vagal tone, increased vagal tone in COPD patient. That's why this anticholinergic are the mainstay of treatment in COPD patient. They are available as nebulizer solution that can be used in combination with the salbutamol nebulizer. Okay, this combination can be used in the nebulizer machine as well. Okay, in the form of solution in acute asthmatic attack and also in the refractory asthma. In that condition, in condition where the asthma is not treated with other drugs. Okay, in that condition, you can combine these drugs and used by the that nebulizer. Dose of ipratropium bromide is 2 to 4 puffs 6 hourly. because it is a somehow short duration of action, that is 4 to 6 hours only. So you can give the frequent puff, 2 to 4 puff 6 hourly. That means in 1 day we have to give 4 times a day. Whereas tiotropium bromide, 1 Rotacap once a day, because it has a long T half, that is 24 hours. So once a day is enough. Next, we have the leukotriene antagonist. Okay, this leukotrienes is also important mediators of inflammation for bronchial asthma. Okay, that cause bronchoconstriction. Okay, these leukotrienes, they are released from the different sites. The first one is they are released from the degranulation of the mast cell. Okay, they are also released from the eosinophil, and some leukotrienes, they are released from the arachidonic acid pathway. Okay, if you remember that prostaglandin synthesis pathway, leukotriene pathway, lipoxygenase pathway, and cyclooxygenase pathway, no, the arachidonic acid that divided into 2 pathway, that is, one is lipoxygenase pathway, one is the cyclooxygenase pathway. Okay, so from the cyclooxygenase pathway prostaglandin is formed, whereas from the lipoxygenase pathway leukotrienes. So in leukotrienes also we have various leukotrienes, LTC4, D4. Okay, these are the different important mediators of inflammation. Okay, so their antagonists are very effective in case of bronchial asthma. In this we have the 2 drugs, montelukast and the zafirlukast. Okay, these drugs inhibits this leukotriene receptor. Okay, thereby inhibiting the function of this leukotrienes. Both have similar action and clinical utility is also similar. Okay, they competitively antagonize this leukotriene 1 receptor mediated bronchoconstriction, and also increase the vascular permeability and recruitment of eosinophil. Okay, thereby inhibiting the release of this cis leukotrienes from the eosinophil. These things I taught you in the NSAIDs class. Okay, in your first semester. This arachidonic acid, cyclooxygenase, and lipoxygenase pathway. So when you are giving the drugs that inhibit the cyclooxygenase pathway, what happened? All this arachidonic acid, they are converted into lipoxygenase pathway. So there is a more and more production of this lipoxygenase. Okay, LTC4 and D4. That's why that is sometimes when you are using aspirin for the long term. Okay, that causes aspirin induced asthma, because the aspirin is NSAIDs. Okay, the prostaglandin inhibitors. So this aspirin will inhibit this cyclooxygenase pathway. Okay, that's why there is a more production of the lipoxygenase that ultimately lead to bronchial asthma. Okay, that is known as the aspirin induced asthma. Okay, so sometimes these leukotriene antagonists are used in case of aspirin induced asthma as well. You should know the mechanism. Why? What is the rationale of using this lipoxygenase or leukotriene antagonist in aspirin-induced asthma? Prophylactic therapy of mild to moderate asthma is alternative to inhaled glucocorticoids. Okay, sometimes it can be used in case instead of glucocorticoids, because this glucocorticoids also inhibits the formation of this prostaglandin as well as the leukotrienes, because this glucocorticoids inhibits the first step. Okay, that inhibits the phospholipase A2, that is the first step of formation of this arachidonic acid or the prostaglandin. So in sometimes if the patient cannot tolerate glucocorticoids or corticosteroids, you can use this leukotriene antagonist. Okay, montelukast and the zafirlukast. More acceptable in children because of the less side effect. Okay, in severe asthma, additive effect with inhaled steroids, they permit reduction in the steroid dose. So in case of severe asthma, these drugs is combined with the steroids, thereby decreasing the dose of both the drugs and decreasing the side effect of the steroid. I hope all of you know the adverse drug reaction of the corticosteroid. Okay, there are various adverse drug reaction of the corticosteroid. Although it has a various utility or use, likewise it has a side effect also. There are various side effects of steroids. Okay, they are not used for the terminating asthma episode, because these drugs, they do not act very fast, okay, and also they do not inhibit the other process, okay, they do not act in the cholinergic system, and they do not cause it bronchodilation, okay. These are not the bronchodilators. Moderate effective in aspirin-induced asthma and exercise-induced asthma, but not in COPD. Okay, why it is used in aspirin-induced asthma? That things I have already discussed, as well as sometimes it can be used in exercise-induced asthma. Okay, but not in COPD. In COPD, always the preferred drug is anticholinergic. Both are very safe drugs, produce less side effect, okay, like headache, rashes, and few cases of the Churg-Strauss syndrome. Okay, this is a syndrome which is associated with vasculitis and eosinophilia. Okay, there is inflammation of the blood vessels that may lead to the hemorrhage. Okay, and petechiae. So these are the characteristics of this Churg-Strauss syndrome. Okay, it is a very rare cases. They are well absorbed orally, and that can be used in the form of tablet also. Okay, high plasma protein bound and metabolized by the CYP enzymes. Okay, plasma half-life is 3 to 6 hours of Montelukast, whereas long with the Zafirlukast, 8 to 12 hours. Dose is 10 milligram and 20 milligram tablet. So for today's class, I'll stop here only. The time is also finished. So if you have any doubt, we will discuss tomorrow, okay? Because it is already 10. We have next class also, no? Are you clear till now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
You should remember at least the important points. Okay, like what is the rationale of combining anticholinergic with the beta 2 agonist?